Canada is saying goodbye, United States. You see, Canada is beyond being just furious at the Trump regime and the United States. Canada has moved on. Canada saying we are finding new allies across the world. We are changing our economy to become far less dependent on the United States, and because of what the Trump regime has done.
The United States has been Canada's closest ally for almost a century. The borders between the two countries were nearly invisible, and they shared trade and culture. However, that relationship is falling apart now. What started out as annoyance has solidified into a movement, and Canada isn't waiting for Washington to reverse its direction. International commerce routes are opening up. American goods are being kept on store shelves, and Canadian travelers are avoiding U.S. locations. There is a silent split taking place that has the potential to change North America. Now, the question is how much America stands to lose and how far Canada is prepared to go. Let's get started. The storyline of the last 2 days points to a sea change in the political and economic landscape of North America. Canada has consented to reduce some of the retaliatory tariffs imposed on the United States. Tariffs that were initially linked to the terms of the agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It may appear to be a surrender at first, but a closer examination reveals something completely different. This gesture is not a sign of weakness. It is a strategic action intended to strengthen Canada's position of power while its leaders quietly reshape the nation's destiny. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, is not motionless. He has sent his foreign minister and industry minister all over the world while he negotiates with Washington. Their goals are to recruit allies who can assist Canada in lessening its reliance on its southern neighbor, develop new alliances, and broaden economic horizons. Carney himself will visit Germany next week to speak with foreign leaders who are keen to improve relations with Ottawa. The Canadian approach is unambiguous. Restructure alliances, diversify commerce, and create an economy independent of Washington's goodwill. The degree of unanimity this change has sparked across Canada's political spectrum is what makes it so remarkable. There is a unique sense of unity among the conservative leaders in Ontario, the left-leaning New Democratic Party in British Columbia, and even Carney's own Liberal administration. Premier David Yai of British Columbia encapsulated the sentiment when he cautioned that Canadian households had suffered actual suffering as a result of unfair U.S. tariffs on timber, softwood, and aluminum. His speech focused on finding markets that value Canadian goods in addition to protecting provincial interests. The provinces were filled with the same emotion. Now is the moment to look outward, not inward, to build the economy. Carney's message has been clear from the start. He has cautioned the public that Canada's readiness to lower some tariffs does not imply capitulation. In actuality, he maintains, Canada is aggressively seeking agreements with other countries while viewing the U.S. as a trading partner among many rather than the core of its economy. Given its location, Washington might be hard to overlook, but Canada's future won't be bound by the unpredictability of its neighbors. Carney just released a statement outlining a broad vision for the future. He promised additional measures to protect Canadian businesses, from autos to agriculture, against American pressure. A comprehensive industrial policy that aims to increase exports, boost competitiveness, and secure jobs will shortly be announced by the government. Investments will go toward national initiatives that have the potential to change energy, defense, and infrastructure, all the while opening up new career paths for Canadian workers. The ultimate objective is to transform the country's economy into one of the most robust in the G7, based on resilience instead of reliance. This strategy calls for a radical overhaul of housing and building practices. Carney has pledged to treble the rate of home construction, a measure intended to address not only Canada's housing issue, as well as to establish a completely new sector of the economy that can sustain sustained expansion. At the same time, Canada is trying to build a defense industry that can sustain its foreign alliances and its sovereignty. Although the goal is lofty, it acknowledges that the previous period of integration with the U.S. is over. The economies of the United States and Canada were more interwoven over the course of several decades. From the liberated, through the trade accords of the 1980s and the subsequent development of NAFTA and COSMA, the two nations established a partnership that was frequently portrayed as unbreakable. Previously perceived as a positive, that profound integration now feels more vulnerable. The dangers of depending too much on one partner have been made clear by Washington's policies, protectionist stance, and increasing political unrest. Carney delivers a direct message. Economic reliance is a thing of the past, and adaptation is now required. Canada will be looking to form new alliances in Europe, Asia, and other regions in the coming weeks. Carney's meeting with Chancellor Friedrich Merz and his cabinet in Germany will be one of the most significant milestones. Alongside him are ministers of natural resources, defense, and industry, and the agenda is broad, encompassing vital minerals, renewable energy, defense cooperation, and industrial ties. It is evident from the Canadian delegation that these discussions are about more than just token gestures. They are focused on creating a new framework for collaboration that is resilient to changing political regimes and unstable trade environments. The attention is not just on Germany. In addition to reaching out to Finland, Sweden, and other countries keen to strengthen their relationship, Canada has already signed defense pacts with European allies. The United States is becoming more and more isolated as a result of the realignment of global power centers. Brazil and China have been enhancing their relationship. In a world where Washington no longer enjoys unquestionable devotion, India is interacting with Beijing, and many other countries are hedging their bets. Canada is setting itself up to prosper in this new climate rather than waiting for the consequences. Carney's own statements indicate both tenacity and practicality. He has underlined how crucial it is to safeguard vital industries that have been caught in the crossfire of U.S. trade battles, such as steel, aluminum, automobiles, and lumber. He also notes that there will be future assessments and possible modifications to the CUSMA Accord. While continuing to construct bridges elsewhere, Canada is getting ready to precisely navigate these changes. Among his most notable public appearances, Carney used hockey, a well-known Canadian sport, to demonstrate his approach. He clarified that during the early phases of a challenging game, players may occasionally drop their gloves to demonstrate that they will not be scared and will occasionally move into the corners with their elbows up to convey a message. That stage has already occurred, he said. Canada kept its ground against U.S. tariffs and sent its warning shots. However, he contended that the game had now progressed to a new phase. At this point, ability, planning, and goal-scoring concentration are crucial. According to him, Canada is prepared to move from defense to attack, carefully managing the U.S. while developing fresh strategies with foreign allies. Because it refers to a more general reality about Canada's current situation, that parallel has resonance. The globe has taken action, the message has been sent, and the war has already been joined. Take note, both Canada's economic future and the balance of power in international trade will depend on what happens next. The decisions being made now will have a lasting impact on the future of the nation. Thus, the stakes are enormous. As it advances, Canada is demonstrating that building new partnerships rather than holding on to old ones is what gives it power. This is an opportunity to reinvent and change. Dependency becomes sovereignty and vulnerabilities into opportunity. Across the border, the United States might still be a major threat. However, its power to shape Canada's future is eroding across governmental, provincial, and industry boundaries. The will to take charge of the future is evident. Thus, Ottawa is constructing while Washington keeps blustering and posing. Canadian leaders are creating blueprints for new sectors and relationships that can weather the storms of international politics, while American leaders rely on rhetoric. There is no mistaking the signals. One-sided reliance is a thing of the past. A new era is being written, one in which Canada maintains its independence and forges its own course. Meanwhile, Mélanie Joly, Canada's Minister of Industry, was traveling throughout Northern Europe to further connections that go far beyond diplomatic symbolism. Her recent visit to Finland and Sweden was about more than just shaking hands and taking pictures. It was about laying fresh groundwork for defense and economic cooperation. The timing of these talks could not be more important, as both countries have recently joined NATO. Joly underlined that Canada wants to increase its economic influence in the EU, with Finland and Sweden acting as natural companions. She reminded audiences that Canada was the first nation to confirm its membership in NATO, a move that was motivated by both defense strategy and the realization of long-standing economic links and common Arctic interests. Joly met with the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and leading economic figures of Sweden. She also had direct interactions with large corporations such as Ericsson, ABB, SAB, and AstraZeneca, businesses that are currently well established in Canada and whose alliances may grow in the years to come. It was a clear message from Stockholm. Canada plans to take advantage of the enormous opportunities for cooperation in manufacturing, defense, technology, and pharmaceuticals. After that, the journey went to Finland, where Joly had meetings with the Prime Minister, the military ministers, economics, and international relations, in addition to senior executives from Nokia and other prominent corporations. The acquisition of the Helsinki shipyard by Quebec's Davy Shipyard, which was the first instance of a domestic shipbuilder acquiring a foreign facility in contemporary Canadian history, was one of the most notable occurrences that were covered. Building and exporting cutting-edge icebreakers is made possible by this acquisition, which is essential given the changing geopolitical landscape in the Arctic. Alongside the trilateral ice pact between the US, Canada, and Finland, the agreement was signed. However, the leaders of Ottawa have stated that they believe that bilateral cooperation with Finland has much more potential. Joly clarified that economic diplomacy is the overarching tactic. According to her, Canada wants to have the most robust economy among the G7, and it will do so by fostering partnerships with countries that can provide genuine opportunities in trade, technology, and defense. This mission was timed to coincide with Ottawa's reevaluation of its reliance on U.S. military hardware. Joly indicated that Canada cannot keep basing its defense requirements only on U.S. designs when the F-35 fighter plane problem was brought up once more. She disclosed that although Canada had previously committed to buying the F-35, the government is now re-evaluating those plans from the viewpoint on security and sovereignty. The fundamental argument was incisive. Ottawa needs to find alternatives if the nation becomes less safe due to an excessive reliance on American planes. Naturally, the fact that there aren't many options presents a hurdle. There aren't many countries that produce aircraft as good as the F-35, and switching from that platform isn't an easy choice. However, Canada seems intent on taking advantage of the opportunity, threatening to use the agreement as leverage in its larger talks with Washington. Discussions with Lockheed Martin and meetings with Sarin, Sweden are being carefully considered. Ottawa plans to play both sides, retaining its flexibility, but making it apparent that the U.S. will no longer control its defense acquisition. American tariffs are having a significant impact back home, particularly in Ontario. Premier Doug Ford, in a recent speech, a conservative politician, made his stance clear. He explained how Trump's actions are hurting Ontario's economy and referred to the tariffs as a direct attack on businesses, workers, and families. Ford spoke on the uncertainties affecting many industries when he was standing in Sia at the Blue Water Bridge, the nation's second busiest commercial border crossing. He pledged that his administration will move on with a strategy to safeguard the province and help create a stronger national economy. Ford's remarks demonstrate a growing bipartisan consensus. People in Canada no longer think that Washington will behave honorably. That sentiment is supported by recent polling. Almost 80% of Canadians believe that Trump would never honor any agreement reached with him. That degree of doubt eliminates the justification for protracted discussions and strengthens the want Canada to turn its gaze from south to west. That distrust has been transformed by the Canadian government into a strategy of redirection, directing efforts toward partnerships that provide stability as opposed to instability. According to a recent Politico article, Canada is attempting to confront Russia by recruiting Arctic friends. The article emphasized how Ottawa is forming defensive alliances with Nordic countries, a development that also enhances Canada's northern stance while decreasing its dependence on American assistance. Carney presents Canada as a nation that can build alliances in areas where American influence is waning, establishing himself as both a domestic leader and an international statesman. Unexpected places are already seeing the effects of these tactics. One of the first sectors in the U.S. to feel the effects was the tourism sector. From the expanding boycott in Canada, the effect is most noticeable in Las Vegas, where Canadian tourists used to be a major contributor to the city's economic stability. According to travel data, Canadian tourists visiting the U.S. have dropped by about 40%, a decline that might cost tens of billions of dollars over the next several years. The lack of Canadian tourists is no longer a theoretical concern for border towns and popular tourist spots across America. Empty hotel rooms and faltering businesses are feeling it. In the meantime, the boycott of American products is becoming more and more popular in Canada. According to a CBC investigation, Canadians are paying far more attention to labels and are becoming much more watchful about what they purchase. There's a noticeable cultural movement to make sure that products are not dependent on U.S. producers. More and more consumers claim that feel obligated to support homegrown companies, not only out of patriotism, but also because purchasing Canadian goods helps keep prices stable, combat inflation, and protect jobs. Every dollar spent at home is being presented as a patriotic and defiant gesture. There is no greater contrast in leadership styles, as Donald Trump makes inconsistent claims regarding everything from wind turbines to international commerce. Canadian officials are describing themselves as steady, calm, and dedicated to multilateral solutions. In contrast to Washington's turn toward unilateralism, Ottawa is standing with countries that still value collaboration. On the global scale, the contrast works effectively. Canada is viewed by leaders in Europe and Asia as a trustworthy partner that can bridge the gaps caused by the unpredictable nature of the United States. The responses from regular Canadians are perhaps the most illuminating. The boycott of American goods and travel is no longer viewed by many as a short-term solution. According to polls and interviews, more and more people plan to adopt a lifelong position that completely rejects U.S. products and services. That kind of thinking comes from a deeper understanding that the